Hi, and welcome to Q's Workshop. I'm back on the WigWag engine today, and so this will be the second last video in the series. And today we're going to be looking at the piston and crank connector. So it should be pretty simple operations. So for the piston, just got to take the diameter of this down to roughly 15 millimeters. So that's just got to be a smooth fit into the cylinder. So it should have a little bit of tightness in here, but it should have there should be no lateral movement, but it should be able to move under the pressure of the steam or compressed air. And then lastly, it's the crank connector. So again, that's pretty simple. I just got to drill and tap a hole into the front of it, take down kind of like a little diameter on the end, and then put a hole on the side for the crank pin. But yeah, should be pretty simple. Let's get this into the lathe and we'll take it from there.
Alright, so it's still oversized. So I measured this bore before I stopped here. So I knew that this has to be under 1590 or 1490 about. So I'm just going to clean the burr off. I'm going to get some fine sandpaper and then we'll hone it in with some sandpaper till it's the right size. Alright, so we've got 5 millimeters here in the beginning. We're going to clean out a little recess in the middle here, and then we'll have another 5 millimeters on the end of the piston, and then we'll part it off. Alright, so now we're just going to do the last little 5mm and part it off. Alright, so I just cleaned off that there and buffed it a little bit. So that's the piston. So next is the crank connector. Right, so I've got the material for the crank connector. This is 10mm by 10mm. The crank connector itself is going to be 15mm in length, with just the front edge turned down a bit, a hole drilled in and tapped, and then a hole drilled in through the side, which I'll have to do on the mill. But for this, I'm not going to take the 3-jaw chuck off for the 4-jaw to hold this. I've just made a little mandrel or a little collet to actually hold this, so it will go in there like that and then get squeezed up in the chuck. Alright, I'm just going to put little chamfers on these edges, round these over a little bit, and then we'll drill and tap it. Alright, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to just saw it off in the vise, and then I'll come here, I'll flip it around, fasten it up, and then just face it on the end. Right, that's done. Looks a bit rough at the moment, so I'll just clean this up with some sandpaper, and then we'll get it into the mill to drill the crank pin hole in there. Alright, let me just get this cleaned up and I'll get you at the workbench.
Alright, so that's it for today. So we've got the little piston. So the only thing I did off camera is I cleaned it with some very fine sandpaper. I think it was 1000 grit sandpaper. I also honed the cylinder. So the one side of the cylinder was a little bit tight. It was a little bit too tight. So all I did is I honed the cylinder a little bit because I was too scared to take too much off the piston because the one side of the cylinder was tighter than the other. If I make the piston a little bit smaller, it will become too loose on the bottom end, and then it'll be looser on the top end of the cylinder, but it'll be too loose at the bottom. So I just honed the cylinder to make it more even. So that's that. So that's all done. Connect the crank connector. It's got a couple of marks on it from when I was filing the little chamfers on. The file slipped over there and made a mark. But yeah, I also just cleaned this up on with some 1000 grit sandpaper. But yeah, that's it for today. In the next episode, so the last episode in this series, I'll be making the little knurled nut that fastens the cylinder to the column. So it's also used for tension. So this will get fastened on there like that with it, and it gets a spring on the back, and then you fasten that little nut for the tension. But yeah, that will be in the next one. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.